My body was soaked in murky liquid, and every single organ was hooked up to tubes. Outside the container, a few humanoid creatures were touring the exhibit, and I was the exhibit. Look at this! This is an original human! 1,000 years ago, our ancestors looked just like this thing. They had no exoskeleton to protect their hearts, no venom sacs to fend off predators. They were the most flawed evolutionary half-product in Earth's history, so when the Great Ascension era came, they were wiped out completely. And this specimen was recovered from an ancient underground cryo vault. It's an extremely rare, fully intact specimen. Hearing that, my heart clenched. My mind flashed back to the gene collapse virus of 2026, the one that swept the entire world. It amplified every genetic flaw in the human body until people died. With no other option, I took my twin daughters into a 10-year cryo sleep. Then a four-armed woman suddenly spoke up. "I want to buy him." The tour guide rubbed his hands. "Sorry, ma'am. This specimen belongs to Eden Life Corporation. It's not for sale. However, if you're willing to pay extra bioelectric credits, we can activate interactive mode." As he said that, he handed her a chunk of flesh. She pressed a button on the chunk, and a blob of yellow-brown mush instantly dropped into the liquid from a tube above. "Eat up, primitive." This is a high-protein paste made from the organs of low-tier mutant beasts. When I still refused to eat, the guide quickly jumped in. Original humans have terrible psychological tolerance. Even a slightly stronger pheromone shock is enough to crash their brains. Since he won't eat, let's try some electrical stimulation. Mid-sentence, a surge of electricity hit the liquid. Every muscle in my body seized up, and I started convulsing violently. That only got the monsters outside the glass, cheering like crazy. One of the rockmen wouldn't stop hammering the glass wall with his fists. "Move it, little monkey. Do a little dance!" Every time he slammed it, I felt violent shifts in the water pressure. At the same time, I noticed at the bottom of the tank, there was a metal valve, and around it grew a ring of dark red moss-like organisms. They were greedily feeding on the tiny drops of nutrient fluid leaking through the valve cracks. The guide rushed over to stop him. The rockman didn't stop. He actually started smashing even harder. "Quit talking. I paid for this." So I picked my moment. The instant the rockman's fist came down again, I slammed myself with everything I had into that dark red, moss-covered area. That spot had already been corroded into hairline cracks. The water pressure instantly ripped the crack wide open. The nutrient flood, packed with glass shards, blasted the humanoids off their feet, and I crashed hard onto the floor. But I didn't hesitate. I jumped up immediately and bolted for the nearest exit. The guide frantically slammed a fleshy control on the console. "Grab him! The specimen escaped!" I sprinted down the corridor for my life, but the ground under my feet wasn't concrete or met. Ow! The walls were lined with thick, pulsing blood vessels, pumping a glowing blue fluid. Soon I hit a fork in the path. The left tunnel blasted heat and reeked of sulfur. The right tunnel was dark and damp, walls covered in purple mold. Then that meatball of a guide roared from behind me. "Lock down Sector H, release the hounds." After a split second of thought, I took the right tunnel. Dark and wet like this, it had to be part of a waste or drainage system, more likely to lead outside, but I'd barely turned the corner when I ran straight into a janitor. "Intruder detected!" He immediately swung a pair of pincers at me. I rolled away in a panic and barely dodged it. Where the pincers hit the wall, yellow slime started oozing out. I didn't dare stop. My eyes raked the corridor desperately, and I spotted one especially. Thick blood vessel in the wall. It was glowing a dangerous bright red. So the second the janitor raised his pincers and lunged again, I drove a glass shard straight into that vessel. A stream of highly corrosive fluid shot directly at the janitor, triggering a violent chemical reaction. The janitor let out a horrifying scream. Gagging, I reached into the creature's back armor and ripped out a cable. It looked like some kind of neural control wire. Then I grabbed one of the monster's limbs and snapped it off, using it to slash through the cable. At that same moment, I heard heavy footsteps. I didn't stop. I kept running deeper in. Suddenly, the space ahead blew wide open. I burst out of the corridor and skidded to the edge of a massive vertical shaft. It dropped so far I couldn't see the bottom. And in the middle of the shaft, floating platforms hung in the air, connected to each other by twitching strands of flesh. "Stop running, little monkey!" A roar exploded from behind me. I didn't hesitate. I leaped onto the platform in front of me, but the platform was weirdly bouncy. My feet slipped and I went rolling right off the edge, but I managed to grab a bone spike jutting from the rim. Then, the rockman landed on the platform too. He walked toward me, one step at a time. "You're gonna taste amazing." My brain went into overdrive. Everything alive has a weakness. This guy's defense was insane. That outer layer might even stop a bullet. But what about the joints? The eyes? And why was he wearing such a heavy breathing mask in here? Then I noticed his filter mask was connected by 2 tubes to a pack on his back. So the instant he reached for me, I let go with one hand from the bone spike. The rockman grabbed nothing but air, and his momentum pitched him forward. At the same time, I swung up using that force and drove both feet into his knee joints. As he went down, I swung the bone blade. At the left air tube on his mask, a burst of green gas exploded out. The rockman's skin began rapidly softening and peeling. I stepped over and planted my foot on his chest, pressing the bone blade against the other air tube. "Tell me, wait, where is this? What year is it?" "New Eden, Sacred Year 104. "Where are my daughters, Qinyao and Qinyue?" "I don't know, only the mother god knows." His voice was fading fast. "Nobody escapes the reclamation yard." Then I cut the last tube. His body completely broke apart and dissolved into a pile of sludge. All that remained was his empty armor and mask. I bent down and pulled a portable terminal out of the sludge. The screen was still on, showing a holographic map. This was the Biological Resource Reclamation Yard at the bottom of the city. The exit was in the shipping zone, 300 meters up. So I smeared the sludge all over myself to mask my scent, then grabbed a rope and started climbing. What I didn't know was that somewhere in the wreckage behind me, a tiny Mechanical Bug had already recorded everything that just went down. Dad, you're finally awake.